How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Alloved's guide series on Curse of Strahd, a 5th edition module. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the village of Berez. This place isn't what it once was. Of course, there's going to be a ton of spoilers, so players don't watch this, but DMs that want added insight on how we can run this thing, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. And here it is, the village of Berez. James RPG art. Every single time I'm going to say it, use it. Fantastic. Love it. Your players are going to walk up and they're going to see this marshy swampland. This village that once might have been, as reputable as all the other villages, now laid waste by all the water. And the reason for that is because these people earned Strahd's ire. And Strahd, being the ancient and being the land, made a water sweep over this place and absolutely destroyed it. Of course, this art shows off a little bit more about what's going on here. As we can see in the foreground, we have a scarecrow, and we'll be getting into that. And of course, in the background here, we have a light. And the reason for that is when your players show up, there is a were-raven that'll try to help them out and uses that light to signal to them. And also importantly, we see that there is a creeping hut in here. And that creeping hut has a lot of fun things. In fact, that's predominantly what we're going to be talking about here. So as we can see here, Berez is located in Area U. Your players have to go out of their way to reach this location. It's not something you accidentally stumble upon. It's not like Vlaki, it's not like the old Bone Grinder, it's not like any of those things. You have to make your way here. You have to go down this road. And by the nature of this map, it implies that the road is not well kept, which, why would it be? No one lives there anymore. So your players have to go down an immense stretch of road for a decent amount of time, and then they finally arrive at a water-sunk village. What do they find when they get there? But most important of all, why would your players have any inclination to come here at all in the first place? As always, the first reason your players may come here is because they're adventurous. If you say, hey, at one point there used to be a village down to the south. I wonder what happened with that village. Maybe that'll go ahead and spark some imagination, and they'll go ahead and just trudge along. But of course, we like tying stories into our games these days. So how do we tie Berez into it? Well, Irina. Irina is a very good driver for this. If your players have any understanding of what's going on with Irina, then understanding what she is going through, and more importantly, what her soul is going through, your players could learn that maybe there's a bit of Irina's past located here. So if your players show up, they can actually find a statue that eerily looks like Irina, except it's clearly old. That'll be pretty awesome. If your players don't know too much, they don't know the full details, coming here and seeing that, especially if they interact with the ghost located in Berez, then your players will begin to understand more and more. And Irina will understand more and more, and that's always fun. The third reason to come here is because the card reading dictates it so. One of the items could be located around here, in which case your players come around here and start looting around this village and eventually find the item that they seek. And the fourth one, which is also a very big one, is Baba Lysaga. Baba Lysaga is a very interesting character, one that I highly recommend incorporating into every campaign. And the reason why she's interesting is because she's an incredibly powerful witch. She is not a hag. People might think that she's a hag because of how powerful she is and more importantly how old she is. But as we'll soon discover, she's just incredibly powerful. She has a tie with Strahd, she has a tie with the land, she also has a tie with other locations around here and random events. She is in command of all the scarecrows that are located in the lands of Barovia, and even more importantly, she is in possession of one of the Wizard of Wine's gems. That is a tremendous deal. If your players are on a quest to get those Wizard of Wine gems back to the winery, then they're going to have to come here and nab that thing from her. But as we'll be getting into, nabbing that thing might be a little bit harder than it seems. And bam, just like that, we get the map of Berez. Sadly, we don't get an intimate map, nothing too fancy, nothing really special about the individual locations here. And also something very important to note is the size and scale of this location. 100 feet per square. Look at that. That's huge. Traditionally, you aren't going to have combats on this map unless you are more comfortable with theater of the mind, and that's perfectly okay. But just look here, this place is pretty big. This place at one point must have been pretty grand and pretty awesome, but of course Strahd came and ruined everything. Now why did Strahd ruin everything? Well, that's here in the intro to Chapter 10, Ruins of Berez. Long before Irina Kolyana, there was a peasant from Berez named Marina. Marina was one of the many incarnations of Tatiana, and at one point Strahd wished to take her as his bride. The villagers did not want this to happen, so the villagers all came together and unfortunately killed Marina. Strahd was very upset about this, so he decided to punish everyone. He flooded the town, destroyed everything, and the villagers that survived fled. And when they returned, they discovered that this place was completely uninhabitable anymore. The marshy area completely ruined everything. The ruins of Berez are now home to Baba Lysaga, an almost mythic figure in this area. She is incredibly powerful. We'll be getting into her stat block in a moment here. She is insanely strong. She commands the scarecrows around here, and she commands the respect of all the druids and berserkers of the land. She, in particular, has a very big vendetta against the ravens located in Barovia, and moreover, she doesn't like the Keepers of the Feather. She knows that the Keepers of the Feather are trying to get rid of Strahd, but Baba Lysaga does not want that, so she's made it her personal life goal and vendetta to destroy all the were-ravens and ravens around. Now, what is Baba Lysaga's affinity to Strahd? We'll be getting into that in a moment. We'll go ahead right now and just go over all of the areas very quickly. For approaching the ruins, your players get this big old text block that you can go ahead and say to your players. And this text block also shows off that the fog is thinner on the far side of the river, where a light flashes amid a dark ring of standing stones. And you can go ahead and show off that, yeah, there is in fact someone trying to signal to the players. Something I would recommend is not showing the map off to your players. As it states here, the fog prevents anybody from seeing further than 120 feet in any direction. So that would be essentially a square. You know, that adds a lot of creepiness to this location. Your players are stumbling around here and things are just jumping out from the fog. Pretty cool, pretty creepy. We also get some cool information that if your players decided to go ahead and try and take a short or long rest in any of these buildings, then yeah, they can go ahead and do that. But they will be accosted by 1d4 swarms of wasps, or in this case, hungry flies. Pretty cool, you know, it adds to the nature of this location. It makes sense that this place is infested with a whole bunch of creepy crawlies. And also dotted around the ruins here, we have 7 scarecrows that are standing guard. These scarecrows are just going to stand there and do nothing. But if they are attacked, or if Baba Lysaga commands it, they will go ahead and defend themselves. In Area 1, we have the abandoned cottages. Not too much text to sift through here, but you should go ahead and show off that every single time your players enter a building, there could be something right there and they just don't know it. Have them guessing, have them curious, but don't waste too much time. This is not the draw of this area. As your players sift around through these waterlogged cottages, go ahead and show off the effects of time. This place is dilapidated, it's not really good to live in, and of course there is a history to tell with this location. In Area 2, we have the Ulrich Mansion. When your players arrive here and see this, they're going to obviously tell that this place maybe at some point must have been the Burgomaster's mansion. As they go ahead and sift through the area, they will discover a ghost, and this ghost will cry out, "Why do you invade my home? Begone, I beseech you." Now, in a classic dig move by Strahd, Laszlo Ulrich cannot leave this location. He is forever torn and, most important of all, stuck to this location in a spiritual form as a ghost. Now, what's very nice here is that this ghost isn't going to immediately attack the players. In fact, there is a great dialogue that can be had here. The ghost will actually recount Marina's sad tale if prompted. Only by convincing Ulrich that Marina has been reborn into Irina can the characters put the poor spirit to rest. So this is obviously a very easy sell if Irina is accompanying the party at this time, as maybe Laszlo will go ahead and be crying and not really being able to look around. Then once your players actually open up his eyes all around, that's when he can go ahead and see Irina, at which point he can open up his eyes and say, "Marina, oh, I'm glad. Your spirit is safe." And then he can go ahead and wander off. So if your players already know that Irina is an incarnation of Tatiana, then that's a pretty easy sell. Your players can go ahead and make the assumptions and say, hey, here's Irina. But what happens if your players don't know about Irina's past? Well, this is actually a very great place to do this as well. This is a great place to learn of that revelation. Maybe as the ghost looks all around at the party, eventually its eyes meet Irina, and at which point the ghost will say, "Marina?" And then people are going to be confused. That's not Marina, that's Irina. Don't you get it? But then Laszlo can go ahead and say, hey, I know that Marina was killed because she was an incarnation, and Irina just so happens to look exactly like Marina. Then your players are going to be saying, oh, that's why Strahd's so fixated on her. That's a pretty awesome way to reveal this whole backstory. But also important is the fact that your players could be prompted to a statue further away, and we'll be getting into in a moment, that will really help sell this image to your players. If your players are scared of ghosts and just go ahead and attack this thing, then a fight's going to ensue, the ghost is going to fight back, but this ghost cannot be dispelled forever. After a single day, the ghost is going to come back. And what's also very interesting here, it does say that characters receive XP for only killing the ghost one time. So if you are running an XP game, this is not an infinite XP farm, which is, I think, a pretty funny little addition to this. Now, if the fortunes of Ravenloft dictate that the item is held in Berez, then the ghost is going to reveal this information. Travel west 200 paces, you're going to find your treasure right there. And then your players can go ahead and make their way to Area 5. We actually get a little bit more information about the location as well here. We get information that there's a cellar, and this place has been raided at some point. It's completely empty. There is a garden, and if your players loot around this garden, then some poisonous snakes are going to attack. And there is a goat pen, and if your players go ahead and disturb the goat pen, then Baba Lysaga is going to be furious. I'm going to be skipping over Baba Lysaga's hut just for this moment, and we'll be doing that at the end of this video. In Area 4, we have this churchyard. Once again, nothing too fancy here. You can see that this place is a cemetery, and there is a collapsed steeple, and really not much more to say. Obviously, you can do a lot of fun stuff with this, but that is entirely to your discretion. In Area 5, we have Marina's monument. Your players aren't really going to expect to come here unless you show them the map and they see that something's off here, or if they get prompted to show up here. Your players arrive, and they will discover a statue, and we get this big old text block of the statue. And of course, if your players have already met Irina, then you can go ahead and say that this bears a striking resemblance to Irina. And then carved into the monument's epitaph reads, Marina taken by the mist. So if your players are still a little bit unsure about the relationship with Irina and Marina, then this will seriously cement it. Your players are going to be saying, oh, maybe that's like your grandma or something. But if you tie so many different elements together, then it will truly come together. Your players are going to understand that Irina is just one of the many incarnations of Tatiana. If your fortune to Ravenloft is found here, you actually get a very interesting combat. Your players are going to see the bloated corpses, or in this case, distended corpses, of several people march toward the party. What's really unique about this is when a corpse is reduced to 0 HP, disgorging is a swarm of poisonous snakes. And these snakes will fight until they are slain. So pretty creepy stuff. Your players get this awesome item, whatever it is. They look around, then a whole bunch of what appears to be, just nasty undead start clawing their way toward them. And then when they die, they all of a sudden shoot out a whole bunch of poisonous snakes that strike out of the party. That's a pretty fun little combat there. In Area 6, we have the Standing Stones. Your players may be prompted to come here because they see someone shining a light, in which case your players come over, and they will see these large stones scattered all about. But most important of all, they'll find the person that was prompting them over here. Her name is Muriel Vinshaw, a wereraven. Now, if your players come here first, then they're going to be in for some good times because Muriel can go ahead and divulge a lot of information. That Berez was banned long ago, that a powerful hag named Baba Lysaga resides in there now, and all the juicy information here on Baba Lysaga. But once again, very interesting stuff here that she specifically calls her a hag because most people would perceive Baba Lysaga to be a hag, when she actually isn't. So it states here that Muriel is going to go ahead and tell the players these things and go ahead and warn them. And under no circumstances will she go ahead and try and intervene by going into Berez. She knows that Baba Lysaga is incredibly powerful, and she's pretty smart. She's gonna not want to deal with that, and I don't blame her. She will go ahead and give out some information about the land around here. If your players don't know about Argynvostolt, she can go ahead and say. And then also stuff about some Yesser Hill. A lot of fun little locations there that your players can be introduced to if they show up here early on. Now we also get some pretty cool information here about the Circle of Standing Stones. These Circle of Standing Stones are actually far older than anything else in the lands of Barovia. This place is very ancient. This place is mysterious and magical, and it's tied to druidic powers. An interesting product of the magic that is latent around here is that any creature that stands within these standing stones are actually immune to being scryed upon by any divination magic. So that's pretty cool. If you are running a campaign where you do have Strahd only scrying on the party, then when your players arrive here, then theoretically, yeah, then Strahd can't understand what's going on here, which is pretty cool. Do you go ahead and tell your players this, though? That's entirely up to you. Do they understand magical effects when they are under them, or do they just know that there's some sort of magic here? And also a very powerful magical effect here is that if druids were to use their wild shape, they would get the max HP of whatever beast they transformed into. That's pretty cool, especially if you have a circle of the moon druid that can go ahead and transform into a pretty powerful beast. Then whatever beast they transform into is going to be super buffed. It's pretty much like their HP is near doubled. That's pretty awesome. It also states, at your discretion, the circle might have other strange properties that have been forgotten over time. Although she knows something about the circle's history, Muriel is unaware of its properties. You know, there's a lot of fun things to be had with that. I'm not going to dive into all the crazy magical things you can do because I think that should be entirely left up to your campaign, whether you have magic here or not, or what classes it affects, or what spells that may pertain to it. That's entirely up to you. I highly recommend, of course, Dragnicarda's and Mandy Mod's revisions to this campaign because there's a lot of fun things to do with that, specifically the Fanes. And now we're on to the juicy fun bit here, Baba Lysaga's Hut, which does get its own little unique map, which is always a ton of fun. Baba Lysaga's Hut is a magically infused tree that can now walk around and now serves as Baba Lysaga's home. This place is filled with everything that she could ever need. A bed, a bathtub, and pretty much that's all she cares about. She has gotten her hands on a whole bunch of swarms of ravens, which she has locked away in cages. These ravens are going to be used for sacrifice later, and what's really fun here is if your players are able to free these swarms of ravens, then they will come to your party's aid and try and attack Baba Lysaga. Baba Lysaga doesn't just walk around everywhere, no, she travels in style. If she's not marching her little hut around, she is then flying in a floating skull. This skull is actually pretty awesome. It is the head of a giant skull that's flipped upside down, and while you're in this thing, you can make this thing move around 40 feet in a turn. Pretty good. And also very good is the fact that this thing gives you 3/4 cover, so that's a +5 to your AC. Really strong. This thing, however, is not undestroyable. This thing has an AC of 15 and 50 HP, and immune to poison and psychic damage. So it states here that she can command this thing. It doesn't say anywhere that anybody else can command this thing. I'm more inclined to believe that no one else will be able to command this thing, but if you want to have some fun, crazy shenanigans, then go ahead and allow there to be some magical override for your players to go ahead and Grand Theft Skull this thing. In the hut's interior, we get some delightful information about what's going on here, and of course your players can catch on that there is something hidden underneath the floorboards, but also, very importantly, is in the center of this room is a cradle. In the cradle, your players will be able to see a little baby, and this baby is freaking cute. And what is that baby? That baby is actually representing Strahd. Once again, we'll be getting to Baba Lysaga right here at the end. And there is definitely a reason why Baba Lysaga chose to have a programmed illusion of Strahd right there in the center. Beneath the floorboards in the corner, your players can go ahead and dig out the gem. If the gem is ripped out, then congratulations, this creeping hut is no longer creeping, it's just a hut. But unfortunately, trying to get this thing out will probably cause some people to grow a little bit irritable. In the bathtub in the corner there, we can see that there is a whole bunch of red splotches. That is because she regularly, ritually bathes in blood. And why does she do that? Well, that's because this keeps her alive. She is very old. In fact, she is even older than Strahd. And yet she is only a human. Bathing ritually in this blood allows her to live forever. Your players, if they are loot happy, are obviously going to see a chest, and if they go ahead and try and open this thing, then unfortunately for them, they're going to be nailed by a glyph of warding, which is going to do a whole bunch of thunder damage, and some crawling claws are going to climb out and try and claw at whoever dared try and open this thing. Inside of this chest is actually some pretty good loot here. We have a whole bunch of gold. We have some very nice little items here. Most important of which, in my mind, is the Stone of Good Luck. Stones of Good Luck are just really awesome. The +1 to everything right there in your little character sheet is pretty friggin' good. Also, if your card reveals that the treasure is here, then it's right there in that chest alongside all the other items. Now, who is Baba Lysaga? I know I'm going to be doing a whole villain's voice on her. Don't worry about that. There's a lot of things to go over with her. But needless to say, she is a very interesting character in this whole story. Two women gave birth to Strahd, the first being Queen Ravnovia, who is the biological mother. However, the second was the Queen's midwife, a devout follower of Mother Night, named Baba Lysaga. So what's really interesting here is Baba Lysaga actually cared so deeply for Strahd and nursed him so much that she actually sang magical lullabies and rhymes to him and actually placed a spark of magic in him, ensuring that he would be a spellcaster. That is a really awesome backstory for why a character has some spellcasting. However, she was creeping a little too hard. Baba Lysaga's unhealthy attachment to baby Strahd did not go unnoticed. After she received several disturbing reports, Queen Ravnovia was forced to banish the midwife from the kingdom. Despite the horrors Strahd has wrought, Lysaga still envisions the perfect child she delivered into the world. Strahd is the only thing in her life that matters to her. During her exile, Baba Lysaga made countless sacrifices to Mother Night, pleading the goddess to afflict Queen Ravnovia with ill health and visit death upon her. Eventually, she got her wish. Queen Ravnovia died, in fact, actually on the way to meeting Strahd at the castle named after her. So, of course, she comes off as a completely insane person, but she does have semblance of intelligence. She knows that Strahd would not accept her for who she is, so she goes ahead and she keeps her distance. She would rather exist in perpetual denial, whiling away the days, months, and years, and centuries, practicing fell magic and looking for ways to help her son. So Baba Lysaga, however, is not alone in this land. She commands several witches, and some of these witches have made their way into Castle Ravenloft. And it's through these witches in Castle Ravenloft where she begins to learn about the were-ravens, and that's where her terrible fascination with destroying all the ravens in the lands of Barovia comes from. So Strahd, he doesn't really care about the were-ravens. He knows that they can't really challenge him. But Baba Lysaga doesn't really care about that. She has chosen to take them on for him. And it's through this hate of the were-ravens where she has made a pact with all the druids at Yestra Hill, convincing them that she gave birth to Strahd, and now these druids are going ahead and going up against the were-ravens at the Wizard of Wine's winery. Mother Night is not a deity that shies away from giving out rewards. Mother Night has bestowed magical gifts upon Lysaga, granting her a stone-like skin, giving her awesome magic, giving her the secret to longevity by bathing in the blood of beasts on nights of the full moon. Failure to do so causes Lysaga to age rapidly, becoming dust and bones in a matter of seconds. So right there, we get some really great information that if your players automatically grow a animosity toward Lysaga, then there is a way to kill her. Not by outright striking her, but by preventing her from bathing. There's certainly a lot that could be said with that. Now, is Baba Lysaga immediately going to come out and start waving her hand, casting spells, and blowing up the party? I certainly don't think so. I think that's boring. I think it's a lot more fun to have a roleplay dynamic with Baba Lysaga, where Baba Lysaga, starts talking to the players, and if the players are smart enough, they'll go ahead and play along with her, and maybe some combat will take place only if the players are dumb enough to go ahead and earn her ire. There is certainly a lot to be said about the fact that she's an incredibly powerful individual, and she is not terribly stupid. In fact, looking at her stats, she is probably more intelligent than anybody else in your party, and probably more wise. She is an incredibly smart individual. But the thing is that she's a little bit detached from reality. And if your players go ahead and say, oh yeah, we love Strahd, oh, we're working with Strahd, then maybe Baba Lysaga is going to see that as an opportunity and use the players to interact with Strahd. Because she doesn't want to interact with Strahd, but she'll go ahead and have the party interact with Strahd in a certain way. I'll be covering how to roleplay Baba Lysaga in the villain's voice, don't you worry, that's going to be a ton of fun. But let's go ahead and take a quick glance at the special events. The first event here is the Creeping Hut. If Baba Lysaga feels threatened in any way, then she's going to go ahead and cause this thing to root out from the ground and go ahead and strike. And mind you, this Creeping Hut is incredibly strong. 16 AC, 263 HP, a plus 12 to hit, and is doing a bejesus ton of damage. With this Creeping Hut attacking and Baba Lysaga casting spells high up in the sky, More often than not, most groups would just simply die. This thing is incredibly tough. The second event here, Lost Battlefield, actually takes place when your players are leaving the village of Berez heading north. Your players are going to hear the sound of battle, and they'll be able to see whiffs of mist and smoke, basically moving around and reenacting a scene. The characters can move about this ghostly battlefield completely unscathed, but what's interesting is, as they go ahead and explore around, if they have not already been to Argynvostal, or if they already have and you want to go ahead and throw this in, you can go ahead and show off a dragon as it flies through the crowds and makes its way to that dark mansion that is looming above. That is a great way to go ahead and show off Argynvostal if your players have not already been there, or even if your players already do know of its existence and have been there. That's still really cool to give them a sense of imagery of what the battles used to look like oh so long ago. The village of Berez doesn't have too much going on for it in regards of the individual locations, but I truly believe that incorporating Irina's backstory into the campaign, having Baba Lysaga be an interactive figure in the community, and have that relationship between the players and the Keepers of the Feather is an amazing one to make your players feel tied into the world. The ruins of Berez are fantastic, and I wholeheartedly believe that you should send your players here, even if it's just for a little sneak peek of what happens when your players deal with Strahd. How far are your players willing to go, especially if they see that whole villages will be ruined if Strahd does not get his way? So go ahead and tell me, how do you plan on incorporating Berez into your campaign? Do you not? Or maybe you go ahead and do some major revisions of your own. Perhaps Berez is actually a monumental village in the campaign, and then something happens that earns Strahd's ire, and Strahd then destroys the village right in front of the player's eyes. That could be a fascinating one. Are these standing stones going to be more prominent in your campaign as they are interacting with all the other locations in the locations of Barovia? Or are you just going to have it be a one-time thing where your players can show up here and meditate and not have to deal with some prying eyes? Those are always valid options. Go ahead and tell me all these things because I want to know. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all my awesome patrons up here. You guys are just absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.